Hey guys, welcome to Juicy Tea, where I read out the best stories on Reddit, so you don't have to. The funny, the shocking, the satisfyingly juicy. Today we're looking back at your favourite karmic justice stories from this year. Ex-girlfriend was a scammer, so I put her in the slammer. Bippity boppity boo, I destroyed her family too. Posted by a jockboy. Around the time that I got my first full-time job and finished college, I decided I was ready to venture out and start dating. I'd heard about this amazing app, a little thing called Tinder, so I decided to give it a shot. After about a week, I finally matched with a woman we'll call Talia. Talia lived in a different city than I did, but the day we matched, she said she was visiting a cousin. We messaged through the app, and after verifying that she was real through Facebook and Instagram, we exchanged phone numbers. She said she was employed full-time, had an apartment, her own car, and was somehow still single. We talked for about 2 weeks on the phone, always at night after my shift at work, before we finally had a chance to meet when our schedules matched up. I drove to a town, spent the night with her, and in the morning, we had breakfast at Waffle House. Talia did have her own apartment, however, she lived next door to her grandma, who I awkwardly had to meet in the morning. I learned from Talia that her car was actually in her grandmother's name, and her apartment was in the name of her cousin. She showed me family portraits with her cousin, talked about her abusive ex, and even showed me how her laundry room was embarrassingly infested with flies and roaches. We officially changed our social media to dating that day. Keep in mind, this was my first relationship in almost 4 years, so I was excited. The scam. Talia also told me that day that she'd been fired from work about a week earlier, but had been too embarrassed to tell me. I asked how she kept up with her bills, and she said that her grandmother and dad had been helping her. Talia then asked if I could help her with the car payment, which was due that weekend. I refused. So, the very first day after you met this woman, you're officially dating, she's introduced you to her family, and she's asking you for money? She then explained that she could get a payday loan, which is banned in our state, and could put it into my checking account. I felt uneasy about it and asked if there was another way she could get the loan. Talia said that she couldn't use her grandmother or her dad's accounts because they'd burned her in the past. I thought it was weird, but she started crying. So I called my bank and opened a linked checking account, and then I gave Talia the new checking account number. Talia contacted a payday loan company, and by Sunday morning, she had the funds in my linked checking account. Per our agreement, I gave her the money. Talia promised to repay the loan within 2 weeks. I had my reservations, but went back home and went back to work on Monday. Talia called me on Wednesday and said that she'd found a new job. I asked if she had the payday loan covered with her first paycheck. She said she did, but I still got charged $47 2 weeks after she set up the loan. I called my bank in Talia to verify that the loan was going through her and terminated the charge from the payday loan as I was not the signed person. Talia reassured me that her dad had given her a check for the entire loan amount, $1,800, and that she would deposit it into my bank soon. 2 weeks later, the payday loan company charged another $47 plus penalty fees and another $47. The $1,800 check had bounced. Talia stopped answering her calls and blocked me on everything. I called my bank and informed them that I was a victim of fraud. Within hours, my main checking account, into which my paycheck had gone, my savings account, with $800 saved for a new car, and the new checking account were closed. I soon found out that Talia had 2 of every social media account, one that she shared with me and one that she had with a boyfriend. Her cousin from the family photos was actually her boyfriend. Her boyfriend was in prison, but from their social media posts, she was visiting him once a month minimum and had plans to marry him. I spent days trying to get back my accounts and my money. My bank, clerk, and my mum urged me to press charges for fraud. My bank mailed me a copy of the bounced check for the criminal investigation, and it showed her boyfriend's name, not her father's, as the owner of the check. That's when I decided to get revenge. The revenge. As mentioned before, Talia's apartment had a major infestation of roaches and flies in her laundry room. While I was going through legal agencies to pursue pressing charges for forgery, I found the name and phone number for Talia's apartment complex. I informed management that Talia and her grandmother both had absolutely filthy apartments. Within a week, Talia posted a request for temporary housing for both her and her grandmother, since her parents wouldn't let her move in. Talia's payday loan company began calling me. Talia had given them my number instead of hers, as they had not received payment yet. I notified them that Talia had fraudulently used my checking account. The rep transferred me to their legal department, who was very interested. It turned out that Talia's grandmother and her father also owed the payday loan company. It wasn't a lot separately, but with my claim, the payday loan company had enough evidence that Talia was a ringleader using her family's accounts. I turned over my evidence, including Talia's text messages promising to pay, and a copy of the bounced check, and my bank statements. By the end of the year, Talia was arrested on several charges. Her grandmother and father were also arrested, but took pleas in exchange for turning over evidence on her. I didn't have to testify at the trial, but I kept informed. Talia went to prison for multiple counts and will serve more than a decade behind bars. Too long didn't read. My ex-girlfriend was a piece of scum. She took and left me without a crumb. I got her and her grandma evicted. No jury acquitted. Hope she's in prison having fun. They hooked up like once. My dude, hiring a sex worker would have been a lot cheaper and easier, just saying. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister that she doesn't deserve our mum's attention and sympathy after finding out that a fiancé cheated? Post by throwaway. I, 26 female, have a younger sister Bayla, 23 female, and we've had a tense relationship for the past 10 years. Back when I was 6 and she was 3, our dad cheated on our mum, which destroyed the family. My mum was working hard in med school while also trying to parent us. My dad was the type of man who was resentful that my mum had the audacity to find a way to continue school instead of dropping out and being a wife to him. Instead of talking to my mum, he became passive-aggressive and would try to sabotage her goals. He even eventually started an affair with my now stepmom, Judy. My mum found out by catching them in her bed. Bayla and I were really young, so my mum decided to not tell us the truth. And Judy used that to get into our good graces. Your mum sounds like a friggin' saint. I was always polite, but distant. Bayla, on the other hand, was young enough for it to work, and it wasn't long until she started calling Judy mum, which really ticked off my mum. But Judy and my dad loved it. I found out the truth when I was 10, and became a lot more cold and angry whenever I had to go to my dad's place. My mum tried to put me in therapy, but my dad wouldn't consent, so my mum had to take him to court over it. When Bella was 13, she started getting on me about refusing to do anything for Judy for Mother's Day, as well as not helping convince our mum to share the day with Judy, since they were both our mums. I snapped and told her the truth. She didn't believe it at first, but when Judy's brother confirmed it, she did sulk about it for about a week, but then went right back to being all loving towards Judy. In her words, it was a long time ago, cheating happens, you can't stop love, and that everything worked out in the end. Ooh, I can feel the karma brewing. She frequently said all this to Mum. Wow! And started a campaign to try and force our mum to forgive our dad and accept Judy. That is disgusting. It's one thing to accept her as her stepmom, fine, that's her choice, but to meddle in her mum's affairs and try and force her to forgive them after what they did to her and play happy families? Ugh. She actually said that she'd be a bad mom if she hated our dad and Judy more than she could love her. To her credit, Mum did try, but Judy was such a passive-aggressive mean girl witch that Mum just washed her hands of the situation. This woman has so much more patience than me, I swear. When it was time for Bailey's high school graduation, she gave our mum an ultimatum. Either sit next to Judy for the entire ceremony and pay for her and our dad's share of the bill for dinner. My mum was going to pay for everyone except for them. Or she wouldn't be invited to her graduation at all. What is wrong with your sister? It's like she's intentionally trying to twist the knife. Why would she choose the cheater that broke your family up over such a kind, patient, generous woman? And you know, your actual mum? Our mum sat out the graduation and didn't attend the dinner. Judy made a post about how evil some mothers can be for not putting their child first, which Bayla liked and shared. Mum then took back the card that she gave to Bayla. It was still in her name. Our mum still paid for Bayla's college tuition, but she wouldn't pay for a room and board like she did for me. Good. She's been taking your mum's kindness for granted. She can't keep spitting in her face and then expect handouts. Bayla threw a fit and accused our mum of favoritism. After that, Bayla and my mum went very low contact, and that's how it's been for years. During this time, Bayla met, dated, and got engaged to Ethan, 26 male. She did invite mum to the wedding, but I think that was just to get some money out of it. But unfortunately, the engagement is off because Ethan ended up cheating. Bayla found out after going to the doctor and finding out that she'd caught something from him. Bayla reached out to mum, but all she got was a text saying, "I'm sorry you're going through this." Well, that's more than your mum got from Bayla, by a freaking mile. Bayla was furious, but I told her, given how she treated our mum and dismissed what Dad and Judy did to her, she really shouldn't expect much. Bayla, my dad, Judy, and some other relatives are now calling me the a-hole, but am I? Oh, the juicy justice! So, Judy and your dad are now suddenly all opposed to cheating? If I was OP, every time Bayla or anyone brought this up, I'd make a big point about how terrible cheating is and how only an absolutely horrible person would ever cheat or support a cheater while making deadpan eye contact with them. What are they gonna do? Disagree? And no, you're not the a-hole, and neither is your mum. It's not like she rubbed it in her face and tried to make Bayla buy her ex and his new girlfriend dinner. She didn't even point out the irony. What were they all expecting from her? Your lease is still valid, even though you were evicted? Okay. Posted by the lovely landlord. I am the landlord for some apartments in the city. I sign the lease agreements and go over the basics with the tenants, although they usually don't want to spend hours delving into the fine print. 99% of the time, it's a breeze and everything's fine. One lady, let's call her Karen, had been paying her rent via a new bank account and new checks for the last few months. All of a sudden, we got several chargeback fees on our account. She'd put a stop payment on the checks and closed the account. I immediately called her. Me. Hi Karen, it looks like your checks bounced for the last few months. I just want to make sure everything's okay. Karen. Oh no! I promise I'll get this fixed. Me. Okay, you've been a good tenant in the past, so I'll give you a month. Needless to say, a month passed and she didn't pay. So I called her again. Me. Hey Karen, we still haven't received payment, so I'm afraid we'll have to file for eviction. Karen. Oh god no! I'm an old woman! I can't afford to be evicted! I'm trying so hard to pay! Can't you give me another shot? Me. As long as you pay before the court date, the eviction won't have to go through. The court date arrives, and guess who hasn't paid yet? At the court, the judge rules for a 24-hour notice to vacate. Karen, in tears, comes up to me afterwards. Karen, can you please just give me another chance? I can't afford to go anywhere else. Me. I'm sorry, Karen, but the only way I could do that is if you paid off the debt, signed a new lease agreement, plus the first month's rent, plus a new security deposit. And I just don't think that's gonna happen. So I left and thought that was that. My maintenance guy would come by in a few days to do the inspection and clean up, and then we'd put it back in the market. He shows up a few days later, and there's a problem. Karen's still there. So I call the sheriff to schedule a set out. However, according to the sheriff, the 24-hour notice was no longer valid, as we'd struck up a deal afterwards, so the court had reversed the eviction decision. I had no recollection of a new deal. So I called the court and they informed me that the eviction was no longer valid, as apparently I had told the sheriff that I was giving her more time, invalidating the decision. What had happened was that Karen had called the sheriff and told him that the court had reversed the decision because of a non-existent deal. She'd then called the court and told them that the sheriff could not evict her as I'd waived the notice. And she had used my words, twisting my denial of an extension into a deal. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. I sent Karen a new lease agreement, asking for the debts in addition to the rent for the first month, and a new security deposit. Her lawyer then contacted me. Yes, she has the money to hire a lawyer, informing me that, in fact, her old lease agreement was still valid, as my deal, you know, the one that requires a new lease agreement, invalidated the eviction decision. So I filed for eviction, on the grounds that she hadn't paid for several months by now, 5 to be exact, and therefore had invalidated her old lease agreement. Then I decided to read her old lease agreement. I already know these contracts pretty well, but like I said, I don't usually delve into the minute details. This time, I did. We show up at court. Karen has a lawyer. Karen is bursting, grinning like a fool, like she's won the lottery. Her lawyer looks fairly happy too. The judge asked me to speak. Me. I would like Karen to leave the apartments, as she's refusing, despite the fact that, according to the court's last decision, she should have left over a month ago by now. Judge. And Miss Karen? Lawyer. Miss Karen cannot be ejected from her home without a new notice. Yes, she has not yet paid past due rent. However, she and the landlord struck up a deal, giving her the time she needed to pay via verbal agreement. This deal, made directly after the last court date, invalidated the last decision. So, Miss Karen will require a new decision, and therefore a new notice, before she can be rightfully evicted from her home. Until then, her lease agreement is still valid. Insert legal BS. Judge. And landlord, what do you have to say? Me. Well, Your Honour, I have to agree. They made a very, very compelling argument. Karen and I did indeed make a deal, giving her the time she needed to pay. And yes, her old lease agreement is still valid. However, according to the terms of the still valid lease, there are some additional things that the court needs to be aware of, and that I'd like to go over for clarification. I'm sure you have a copy, Your Honour. Judge. Yes, I do. Me. And you have a copy, lawyer? Lawyer. Yes, I do. Me. Excellent. Well, Your Honour, if you look at Section 4, Subsection A on page 2, you'll see that after 10 days of non-payment, a late fee of $100 is applied. If you continue reading to Subsection B, you'll see that after 15 days of non-payment, additional late fees of $10 a day are applied until full payment is rendered. If you continue to Subsection C, you'll see that failed payments necessitate a chargeback fee of $50 per failed payment. If you'll continue, Your Honour, to page 4, Section 7, Subsection F, you'll see that if a tenant is in any way responsible for a loss of rent, including leaving the property in less than a move-in ready condition, failed payments, or, lastly, a refusal to vacate in the case of an eviction, the tenant is responsible for payment of said lost rent, in addition to any other debts owed. Also, on page 8, Section 14, Subsection A, you'll note that the tenant is responsible for any and all legal fees resulting from the eviction process, including attorney's fees, such as the attorney I hired to help me review this lease agreement. At this point, Karen's lawyer has gone completely white. It's clear that he was more concerned that I would fight the whole deal thing than the terms of the lease that he thought he'd have to fight to keep valid. Karen looks utterly shell-shocked. Her mouth is slightly agape, like a small child confused by a game of peekaboo. The judge, meanwhile, is completely unfazed. Me. As you can see, Your Honour, the total owed is in excess of $16,000. I will happily accept payment in the form of a cashier's check. I'd hate to have to charge yet another $50 fee for failed payment should another personal check bounce. Judge. Lawyer, do you have anything to say? At this point, the lawyer looks like he's about to pass out. Karen seems to have stopped breathing. The judge remains silent for a moment and then collects herself. Judge. I'm afraid you'll have to address that matter of the debt in a different court than this one. We are here only to judge whether Miss Karen is to be evicted from her home today. Me. Oh, if she wants to stay, I'd be happy to let her, as long as she agrees to continue to abide by the terms of the lease agreement, specifically those clauses outlined above, and pays the debt owed today. Judge. I'm going to rule for a 24-hour notice to vacate, unless Miss Karen can produce payment at this very moment. Karen sits, still, speechless even. Her lawyer is eyeing the window. I like to think contemplating his decisions in life that led him to this point. Judge. Right then, a 24-hour notice to vacate. And landlord, you'll want to file those charges in small claims court. or a higher court if it exceeds the amount that you can legally pursue in small claims. Me. Already filed, Your Honor. Karen was evicted. The payout after all of it was about $20,000. And my boss gave me a big chunk of it as a bonus. Boom! Ex-boss accused me of reporting him, so I did. Post by deleted. I worked for his small company for 6 weeks at the end of 2020. He sacked me with no real explanation when I was sick with COVID. I have undiagnosed ADHD, so I wasn't massively surprised it affects my performance. But I was surprised by the timing, and the fact that it was via email. I asked for more clarity. I was never rude to him. I just told him I wish he'd called me so I could get some feedback. Well, he got really mad and proceeded to write a long list of my overly exaggerated and some false shortcomings. He then said, "If you want to take legal action against me, let me know." I didn't. I left it and moved on. Fast forward to today. He just called my mobile from a private number asking how I was. I was taken aback as we've had no communication since. He said, "Someone has put in a report that I'm using unlicensed software. Was it you? Because I know we left on bad terms." I said, "I've got no idea what you're talking about." He made it seem like I was devastated that he sacked me, lol, and would have good reason to report him. No matter what I said, he was convinced that it was me. He even accused my dad, who works in IT. I didn't even know he was using unlicensed software. I said, "I feel like you're accusing me unfairly here." He raised his voice and shouted, "Why do you always play the victim? Stop playing the victim!" Probably in reference to the fact that I questioned the way he sacked me. It sounded so rehearsed that I honestly had to hold back laughter. Then he said, "I'm not accusing you, but you did do it, didn't you?" After the call, I realized it probably was unlicensed. We only ever use the student version of Autodesk, which is illegal when you're running a business. This combined with his accusation tells me that he was in fact breaking the law. I was so pissed off by his accusation that I actually did report him to both Autodesk and BSA. He'll have to run an audit and likely face a huge fine. He thinks I did it anyway, so what harm can one more report do? Anyways, that's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. Have an amazing rest of your day. Bye!